every disorder that is in the Diagnostic and Statistic Manual, there has not been a single scientific study that has found a genetic cause for any of those disorders. All of those disorders were put forward with the belief that we would eventually find studies that would discover the genetic cause. Because most people believe that those disorders are diseases, and the definition of a disease is that it has a biological cause.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a plethora of books that people could read to completely destroy the lie that we have been told that any of these mental disorders are the cause of a chemical imbalance in the brain.
Yep.
This is such an interesting place because most people, if you ask them what causes depression, they'll say, like you don't have enough of some chemical in your brain.
Been in too many debates about that one thing.
Right.
People get super triggered. Yeah.
So what's wild is that if you read the right books, and the main book is called Anatomy of an Epidemic by Robert Whitaker. This is an award-winning journalist from the Boston Globe newspaper who wrote a book like 10 years ago on the history of psychiatric meds, how well they work, and what happens when you take them for a long time. And the end of that book, he has a debate at Harvard with one of the leading psychiatrists of the time. Again, this was about 10 or 12 years ago. And Robert Whitaker puts forth all the evidence that shows there has not been a single scientific study that has shown that that a chemical imbalance of any sort that can be measured creates depression or schizophrenia. And he's debating with a Harvard psychiatrist in a hospital that is connected to Harvard. And what the psychiatrist says is, yeah, we've never believed that. And he's talking about us as like the field of psychiatrists. We've never believed that like it's just the lack of this causes this. And Robert Whitaker was like, well, then you need to go tell the American people that because none of them know that.
Mm-hmm.
So the situation that we're in right now in our country is that because of the massive opportunity that the pharma companies had to produce propaganda before there was the internet, so this was mainly in the late 80s and early 90s, they were able to spew so much propaganda through their commercials that the majority of people believe that what scientists believe is that depression and anxiety and things like that are caused by a chemical imbalance.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if you're able to speak the language of science and you talk to 99% of psychiatrists alive right now, if you ask them, is depression or these other psychiatric conditions caused by a chemical imbalance, they would say no. You've never believed that. Like that's where they've gotten to in their defense, especially in the wake of books like Anatomy of an Epidemic. So, there is no biological cause to any of these disorders. Why are they happening? And also, we live in a time where every year we're producing more psychiatric meds and more people are being diagnosed with having mental disorders.
Mm-hmm.
So that's an inverse correlation that doesn't make any fucking sense. We are prescribing more and more people are still getting sick.
Mm-hmm.
My hypothesis, and there's like a whole bunch of books I want to offer so it doesn't just sound like it's me on a couch being like this is, but my hypothesis is that all of the ways that our consciousness is able to quote unquote get squirrely on us are the result of us not knowing how to listen and act on behalf of that whisper that is in us. The function of elders in most cultures were to teach the adolescents and the adults how to be in harmony with that voice. We don't have elders in our culture. And we also live in a time with no coherent ethic. We have no world religion. Like with the rise of science, we have killed any type of attempt for a monotheistic religion. And so the result of that is we live in a time where 300 million people are disabled, meaning they legally can't work because of depression. you best believe almost all of those motherfuckers are on antidepressants yet are still disabled.
Yeah.
And so anyone who is paying attention can look at that and see, oh, that's a tremendous amount of evidence that everything that we've been told about what causes a depression is bullshit. There's 450 million people who are diagnosed with a mental disorder. And these are just people in the Western world that we can like track.
Yeah.
And then it's something like 37 million people die per year from what's called diseases of civilization, which are deaths from chronic illnesses that didn't exist, like 100 years ago. And I think all of that is evidence that we're living in a time where we have so fundamentally misunderstood what it means to be a human.
Mhm.
We have fundamentally misunderstood how the daimon in us speaks to us. And we have fundamentally misunderstood what our place in the world is. And what I mean by that is that the dominant story of our time is that you are a randomly produced biological car. And if something is wrong with you, it's just because of chance. And we have the spare part come by from us. Oh, by the way, you have to take this spare part every day for the rest of your life. Oh, and then this spare part fucks up that part, so then we'll give you this. And I think like that, a person who starts to take any type of psychiatric med will end up a lifetime customer.
I was on 10 3 years ago.
10.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the thing, yeah.
That's my story. That's my story, but I was on about 10 3 years ago. Yeah.
So the thing that happens
Almost
is,
killed me.
yeah,
Yeah.
like when I read the stories, like it's making my eyes water now. It makes me so goddamn mad that, especially if you get on these psychiatric meds when you're young, what tends to happen is that they fuck up so much other shit in your body that you have to then take a bunch of other things to deal with all the other things, and you get
Yeah,
people.
to me, I was put on antidepressant, and I was like, it's not working, double the dose. It's not working, double the dose. Oh, it's not working. You have ADHD, Adderall. It's not working. You have panic disorder, Xanax. It's not working. Maybe bipolar, lithium. It's not working. Increase all the doses. That was my life for years until I was like, and I got to a point where the only thought I could have was to kill myself. Literally for weeks of my life. The only thing I could think. That's probably my demon screaming at me, and that's what it took for me to just like pop them all off. But almost killed me. So it's very. My heart is very happy to hear what you're saying. 'Cause it's important. Yeah.
Yeah. I think. Do you know what lobotomies are?
I think so, but clarify it.
Yeah. So for people listening, a lobotomy is when you take a special type of ice pick and you stick it up a person's nose, and then you hook their prefrontal cortex and you rip it out of their nose. And that was a procedure that was invented about 100 years ago that won the Nobel Prize because people who were deeply psychotic, when you did that to them, they relaxed or appeared to have relaxed. To the people who were trying to, keep them orderly inside of a prison that was called a mental institution.
Yeah.
And the people who first invented the lobotomy got such good responses from people who ran hospitals that they got in buses and they went all over the country to all these mental hospitals and they did their lobotomies on people and they won the Nobel Prize. 100 years later, we can look back and see that was barbaric, that was stupid, that was not ethical, that was not okay, and we're not going to do shit like that. I believe so deeply in my heart that 100 years from now, we're going to look back at how we have treated mental illness and look at these psychiatric meds, and we will see it as a worse blunder than the lobotomies because of how many people it got into. And what we're just starting to learn, a psychiatrist out of Harvard last year published a book called Brain Energy. His name is Christopher Palmer. And what he is finding is that he's making the argument that all mental disorders are at root due to a metabolic injury. And that when your metabolism is deeply injured, the expression of your unconscious drives start to get really chaotic and loud and jumbled. And that many psychiatric meds that we take actually further injure your metabolism, especially antidepressants and anti-anxiety meds. And so what he's arguing is that we live in a culture right now that because of the type of foods that we eat, the type of clothes that we wear, the type of soaps and shit that we use around our house, and just the type of environments that we live in, our metabolism is deeply injured, which causes, or I wouldn't say cause, but like a high correlation with schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, depression, anxiety, eating disorders, all that shit. And that most of the meds that we take to try to help those things, what he is finding in his research is they further injure your metabolism.
Yeah.
So I think in 100 years, we're going to look back at what we're doing and it's going to be worse than what we were doing with lobotomies. The caveat that is important to offer whenever I get into this is it is dangerous to risk getting off of all of your meds on your own cold turkey.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed that video. If you want to watch more content, click this video right here. And please don't forget to subscribe right here. Thank you.